Good morning. Am I audible? Am I visible? Can you confirm that, please? Yes, I am. Great. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We'll wait 2-3 minutes for everybody to join in. Okay. As we know, today's classes are going to go according to this schedule: 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Then 3 to 3:40 is going to be our lunch break. Thereafter, we will go from 3:40 to 5:40. This is going to be part B. This is part A. Then 5:40 to 6 p.m. is going to be our break again. And thereafter, 6 to 8, last 2 hours, part C. Good evening, not good evening, but good morning, good afternoon, good afternoon. So we will be going about in this fashion today generally, and over and above that, we will also cover 2 to 3 standard things today. First, we will discuss 6th century BC, which is Mahajanpadas. Thereafter, once we're done with Mahajanpadas, we'll move to Buddhism, Jainism, and Ajivikas, very important topic. And thereafter, the last major topics which we do today is Mauryas, along with Alexander here. So basically, today's agenda is to cover the 3rd and the 4th module. Tomorrow, we will finish Ancient with the 5th, 6th, and 7th module. This is the basic agenda for this weekend, and next weekend we start Medieval. So this is the way we go about it. Right. Good afternoon. We'll be waiting for 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll begin. I can see I have a screen here that my audio and video is perfect. So I hope you're also getting the audio and video without any issues. But these, I am not sure which environment you have to send me an email. I'll get it sorted. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. So we'll be waiting for another 2 to 3 minutes. We'll start at 12:05. I hope you also know one more very important thing, because a lot of you actually rely on recordings. I hope that you know that the recording of this class will be available for only 7 days. Thereafter, after a week, automatically, the recording will not be available. Standard protocol for all classes everywhere. I just wanted to point this out to you who are basically planning to watch the recording later. Do watch it within the week itself, because the recording will only be available for 7 days. Not a new thing, something which I'm reiterating in that regard. Janvi, good morning. I have a question regarding last class in the society socialist lecture. We talked about one line there is mentioned. Social mobility as compared to caste system. See, Janvi, what you are talking about, there's no change. This has always been the protocol. Janvi, what you are basically talking about is modern Varna and caste. And social justice, even if a person is saying that Varna mentioned that Varna system of this occupation provides greater avenue for social mobility. See, I don't know who is the teacher, and fundamentally, Varna and caste system are different things. So, Varna is rigid, that is a given. Social mobility is not possible within Varna. The person may be talking about the earliest manifestation of Varna, which was basically based on occupation, later got crystallized into Varna by birth. Caste, I will discuss with you in Gupta period, which is post-Maurya Gupta period. Caste is a totally different thing. But caste, jati, varna, as we call them today, and what is there in the concept of what we are discussing, which is the 6th century BCE, the Mauryan Gupta period, is very, very different. Caste today is quite different, much more elaborate, much more crystallized, and we are going to talk about the formation of it. When I will discuss that with you, maybe it will give you more clarity, but it is a social exclusionary practice. It is a social discriminatory practice. It is based on social rigidity, and that is a given. So I don't know in what context that teacher has said that caste is a little bit more rigid or Varna is a little bit. No, social mobility is never associated with Varna. Rather than caste, that too, caste is a product of social mobility within Varna later, which is called Varna Samskara. We'll discuss that when we reach there. Separate issue altogether. There are two different things which you're mixing up. So I hope that you're getting my point. That in the modern connotation of caste and Varna and the what we call as connotation of caste and Varna in the context we are going to discuss are totally different. We'll talk about that. We are going to come to that. We'll discuss caste formation. We'll discuss all of these things, though they are not part of the syllabus. Still, I'm going to discuss that. So everybody's here. Can we start? Yes, no. Have to be more vocal. Just to tell you, just to reiterate, a lot of you rely on looking at the recordings. Just to reiterate, 7 days recordings are only available. After 7 days, this is not something new. I was asked to basically convey this to you. I didn't do that last week. Today, I'm telling you that if today this recording is being done, it will only be available till next Friday or Saturday, according to how we count 7 days. So please don't have some discipline and do at least watch the videos. If not, be alive with me. That is very, very important. Sushmita, I am not sure which reference point you're talking about. Which reference point you're talking about? Previous class in the sense which batch? And very simply, the same thing is done in every batch. There's no difference in that regard. The syllabus is the same. Maybe number of modules covered would be different. That is it. So very simply, today we have to start with 6th century BC, Ajivikas, Buddhism, Jainism, thereafter Mauryas, Alexander. Think important in that regard. Well, perfect, Sushmita, no issues. If that is the case, most probably what happens is, and this is the thing which you would have not realized, if you will watch recorded videos, the same thing will seem as more difficult. If you actually are live with me, you will realize that it is easier. Because firstly, if you get it out, you can automatically get the redressal here. Further, the point is when I'm doing something in a certain flow, it makes more sense. This is something which in a way is, if you can say it's a bad habit or a good habit, certain people think that we will watch videos and we'll understand. Then there's no difference between a recorded session and a live session. That is why we have these live sessions. So I always encourage my students to come in a live session. That way they are better having an understanding of how to go forward. Okay. Sort of annotated PPT I'm not talking about. I'm talking about that is obviously there for till you have the course. It's about the recording of this session. Recording of the session, which is that once the recording of the session will only be available for 7 days. Okay. There's something which you should know. Somebody would surely be watching me later as a recorded session. So for you who's watching me as a recorded session, remember this recording is only available for 7 days. For future generations, I've also given a message. Okay. Now, let's talk about where we were, what we were. We'll be discussing art and culture. Yes, Samhita we will discuss first ancient, medieval, and art and culture. This week it is going to be ancient. Next week we start medieval. Next to next week we will transition to art and culture. Okay. There was no organized army within the Harappan civilization. Let's revise, and I hope that you have been revising over the week. Now, what have we done till this point? We started, if you remember, at 2 million BCE. Thereafter, the age we discussed was Paleolithic. Thereafter, we reached 10,000 BCE and Mesolithic. Okay, Mesolithic. Then 4,000 BCE and Neolithic. Then we discussed 2600 BC. I know that we've done non-Harappan Chalcolithic, but I will keep it in the side. We discussed what we call as IBC, Indus Valley Civilization. Then we discussed 1500 BCE and then 1000 BCE, which is early Vedic and later Vedic. Now, please revise with me. This is what we did last time. So, when we talk about what we have done previously, we started with the concept of no state, no economy, hunting, gathering, high ages, fire, and no taxation, small population, and crude tools. Thereafter, we saw that when we went to the Mesolithic period, still no state was there. Hunting, gathering is happening, but that is also now supplemented with domestication of animals, rituals, and burials. And last but not the least, the concept of microliths emerge, warmer temperature, bigger population. Now, when we talk about the Neolithic, we see a certain change, which is early state formation, the concept of agriculture, plus hunting, plus animal husbandry. We see complex society, no taxation, no trade, and the simple point is surplus production, rituals, sedentary life. Now, if we go to the Indus Valley Civilization, this is called first urbanization. And we have mature state, but we don't know the nature. Same agriculture plus hunting, gathering plus animal husbandry. We have a complex society, craft specialization. Further, we have trade, the most important concept, internal and external trade. Early state formation means which type of state? It could be any form of state. Mostly it is oligarchic system, but could be any form of state. Early state formation could be 1%, could be 10 people. That is not defined. Craft specialization means division of labor. No, not division of labor, but division of occupations. Trade, internal and external, plus naturalistic religion, and no taxation, no currency. Now, if you go to early Vedic and later Vedic, we discussed how it was a regression in a way that we have pastoralism, tribal state, no taxation, no trade, no hereditary kingship. Further, we have democratic institutions and egalitarian state. At the same point of time, it is a later Vedic period which changes everything, because it is in the later Vedic period that we have agriculture, which in turn leads to monarchical systems, kingship based on rituals, and it is hereditary. We have fourfold Varna system, the concept of Vedic Brahmanism, the subordination of women to men, and this is the period of territorial kingship. I hope that you remember this much. Pastoralism means, Dharmendra, were you there in the last class? Pastoralism means when you are based on animal husbandry, because you're asking me questions which would pertain to the last class or the last week. Varna system evolved from class. No, Hardeep, not the right way of understanding it. Caste specialization will always be there. Varna is a concept which comes out of Vedic Brahmanism itself. Okay, so I need everybody's assertion. Do we remember this much? This is what we did last week. We traversed from 2 million BCE to 1000 BCE. Are you in a position today to write this down and understand it without basic referencing? Because it is important that you're able to make these things. This is how you revise. This is how you go forward. So can I now take the story one step forward vis-a-vis understanding the concept of what we call a second urbanization or 6th century BCE? Okay. Now, the 6th century BCE is basically described as a period of intense trade and a very important revivalism. It is called second urbanization. First urbanization was which one? IBC, very good. So second urbanization was the 6th century BC. You have rise of new religions or heterodox religions, which we will discuss. You also have rise of internal and external trade. You have rise of first currency in the Indian subcontinent. And over and above 6th century BC is also the age of Mahajanapadas. Now I will start with this, then I will discuss this, then this, and this is the next theme, which is Buddhism, Jainism, and Ajivas. We will discuss this in the end. So the first thing is something which I introduced to you last time also, but I'm again repeating myself, which is that later Vedic period. Please pay attention now. Anybody who was there last week, this week, whatever week, please pay attention because from this point forward, I'm again going into teaching mode. Everything till this point was revision. So let's talk about the later Vedic age. When we talk about the later Vedic age, generally, it led to what we call as the concept of territorial kingship, which is that now the king was not identified by his people but by territory, and therefore this in turn led to the rise of what we call as 22 Janapadas. 22 Janapadas means 22 states. This means states. This could be any form of state, but 22 forms of state which had internal conflict, and this got consolidated into 16 Maha Janapadas. So basically, these Janapadas fight with each other in order to produce Maha Janapadas, 16 of them. At the same point of time, we also have what is called eastern or eastward expansion. Why was eastward expansion possible? We discussed it last time itself. Why was eastward expansion possible? Very good. Which is the availability of iron. Iron, which was known to the Aryans, a linguistic group, allowed for iron implements to be used in the later Vedic period, which allowed for clearing of the forests. And that in turn meant that now we were entering what is called the alluvial plains of India, the Ganga Yamuna Doab, or one of the most fertile territories of India itself. And this is the stepping point of how these 22 Mahajanapadas fight to become what we call as 16 Mahajanapadas. So the state formation process, which started in the later Vedic period, led to the first stage, which is Janapadas, and then to the second stage, which is the Mahajanapadas to be formed. And the clearing of the forests allowed for eastward expansion, and that is evident from the location of these Mahajanapadas. Now, the simple point is there were two types of Mahajanapadas. One are called monarchies, the other one are called republics, or the term is Gana Sanghas. Gana Sanghas. Now, what do you mean by monarchy? What do you mean by republic? See, monarchy is one person rule based on hereditary kingship. On the other hand, when we talk about the Gana Sanghas, they are oligarchic or rule of few. Now, the question with Dharmendra last is, should we remember this? Now, tell me one thing. UPSC aspirant will remember this list 1 or this list 2. Which is the better list to learn? 2. Because if they ask you, which is quite uncommon nowadays, if they do ask you, you should have the smaller list with you so that you can eliminate. But with that 1 pair, 2 pair, 3 pair, still knowing the Mahajanapadas, which are Gana Sanghas, you will still be able to come to the answer. Now, how do you remember something like this? This is the $1,000,000 question. How do you remember something like this? And the way you remember it is through acronyms. So I'll make an acronym in front of you. Do not make KPKVM. This is not good enough. Because what will happen is there are other V's also, there are other M's also, and there are other K's also. So don't do that. Rather, pick up 2 to 3 lines which are 2 to 3 words which are very, very specific to it. So, for example, Kur, Kurpan, Kam, Vaj, Mal. Kurpan, Kam, Vaj, Mal. And by doing that, you know that you're the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the standard what we call as Mahajanapadas. Why am I taking Vaj? Because there is Vat also. And why am I taking Mal? Because there is Mag also. So I'm trying to make sure that very simply, I am taking the terms which can at least give me an answer in the examination. This is called the concept of acronym making, mnemonics as they call. You can make a better one, Pan, Kur, whatever you want to call it. The simple point is that this is how you learn. Write them down, paste it around your study table so that you look at it from time to time. But by doing this, it will help you generally. Now, for the purpose of the examination, more than just knowing the names, it is more important to know the geography of these different locations. And let's try to understand that. See, there are 3 types of maps I will show you. This is the Upinder Singh map, which is basically an optional level book. Thereafter, you have the NCERT map. And very simply, what you will realize is that within them, there is a little bit of variation. The variation is there because these different terms which are used for example, the Mahajanapadas, they varied from text to text. 16, the number is totally correct, but the names did used to vary. So the one I've given you is the modern consensus one. Now, what do you do with this map? What do you do with this formation? See, for you, most of the questions can be managed just by knowing the northernmost. This is not clear. 1 second. By knowing the northernmost, thereafter the southernmost, along with that the westernmost and the easternmost. When we talk about this, this is the area of Buddhism, Jainism, and where Buddha and Mahavira operated. And if you remember last time I told you that I am right now only concentrating on the what we call as northern sector. I will tell you what is megalithics when I will reach the southern sector in that regard. Now, this map and the next one, there are going to be standard concepts. Kamboj, Gandhara, northernmost. Ashmaka, Avanti, southernmost. Anga, Vanga, basically in one text it's called Anga, the other one is called Vanga. So we put both of them. This would be easternmost. And you have Surusena, Matsya, and Avanti as the westernmost. The most powerful out of all of them was Magad. Magad being the most powerful, we'll discuss why. But for me, understanding this map is very, very important. If you can understand this map and if you can learn the locations, okay, Kamboj, Gandhara, Anga, Vanga, Avanti, Surusena, Matsya, and Ashmaka, at a certain location, your work is done because there's no point learning each and everything for one question if it comes in the examination. So what I want from you is to concentrate on 3 things. First, learning the 5. Second, thereafter, learning the northernmost, southernmost, easternmost, and westernmost. Can we do this? Can we concentrate on this? Because thereafter, I'll give you tables which are just for reference in that regard. Okay, so let's talk about the different aspects related to what is the other information which you can see in PCS level examinations. UPSC used to ask these questions 20 years back, but now they've abandoned this concept. But I've still give this to you in the concept. Avanti is both western and southernmost because they don't have direct boundaries, so they're both. Avanti comes in both southernmost and westernmost also. Okay, now I'm not asking you to learn this. I'm just giving this to you. In the sense, for every different Mahajanpada, I've given you the capital, Mahajanpada, what type of government was it, significance and location. For me, these three things rather really matter more, the mapping and the names. Other than that, if you want to learn further, I have given all of this information in a tabular form so that you don't have to worry. Because for me, what matters right now is to tell you about Magad, which is what comes in the examination. So before I go to Magad and tell you why Magad became what it was, let us try to understand what we've done since the last half an hour. First, we discussed the concept of the what we did last week. Second, we discussed the monarchies and the republics which developed because of what is called eastward expansion, Iron Age and later Vedic period. Then we discussed the five, which are basically the republics, Ganasanghas, and the locations of the northern, southern, eastern, and westernmost. If all of this is clear, then we talk about Magad, which is really the place where we need to concentrate. Tables are in mocks, that's a separate issue altogether. But for me, if you have basic information of locations, you can answer any of the questions in that sense. Tables are for your reference. If you learn them only when you've covered everything. When you have nothing to do in life, then learn them. That is acceptable. Okay. Can we talk about Magad? You have to be more energetic. First, R itself. Hold in front of us. Tomorrow, hold it again. Right. Now, let's talk about Magad. When we discuss Magad, when we move to the concept of economy, then we'll move to the next module itself. Now, out of all the different Mahajanpadas, if you look at it, Magad was the most powerful but the best placed also. Whilst Magad had its problems with Vatasya, it had its constant warfare with Kashi and Kosala, Magad was able to emerge victorious and it actually started to expand itself later to become the most important Mahajanpada to dominate everyone else. So when we talk about the 16 Mahajanpadas, Magad, Kosala, Vatasya and Avanti are the most powerful, which is basically monarchies were very, very powerful and they fought within themselves for multiple years, and out of that basically Magad emerged as very, very important. I'll discuss the rulers also and why is it the case. But the point is, with the victory of Magad, one thing was clear: democratic, a semi-democratic system of Ganasas would never be able to survive in front of a monarchy. Now, why was Magad able to dominate? Now, please pay attention. Herein comes the questions, standard questions. What was the strategic advantage which Magad had, which allowed it to become the most powerful Mahajanpada? And the first major reason is its location. The location was very simply, in a way, so strategic that in order to reach Magad, you would have to actually have a miracle help you. Firstly, Magad was on a higher ground. Magad was on the Chota Nagpur plateau in that regard, was on higher ground, and very simply, its two capitals. First one, the Rajgir sector and Patliputra, which is Patna, and the Rajgir would be a little bit away from Patna. Patliputra would be Patna itself. This was on higher ground. So basically, Magad could see movement on the plains, and therefore they could, in a way, anticipate movement of the enemy well. First is this. Second is the fact that it was surrounded by three rivers, and the only way entering was also through a hill. So you have the Ganga, the Son, and the Champa river, all basically flanking the Magad sector in such a way that Magad had a natural obstruction on three sides. And if that was not enough, on this A sector, there were certain hills. So in a way, it was compacted between natural boundaries itself. So the rivers, the hill complex plus higher ground allowed for Magad to have a strategic advantage generally in military history, in general military strategy. These are considered to be very good. But it is not that Magad was powerful just by chance. The second most important advantage Magad had was iron access. See, if you look at the location of Magad generally, you would realize that it is near the iron belt of India generally, and therefore they had the best and most, or rather largest volume of weapons. So with access to both iron and copper, their warfare was very, very what we call as brutal, because their army was very powerful. They had the most amount of swords, they had the most amount of weaponry because of access to iron. And last but not the least is that Magad also was on a trade route, and therefore lot of prosperity and what we call as wealth generation in the Magad sector. So Magad, if you look at the location generally, you will realize that, and I will show it to you. Magad's location was such that it was connecting the southern and the northern routes in that regard, and that allowed for Rajgir and Patliputra to actually be one of the most powerful sectors and generally the most important and prosperous cities of this period. So when we talk about Magad, Magad had three basic advantages. One would be the location, second would be iron access, and third would be the form of economy it had, and specifically more access to iron and more access to wealth allowed it to be prosperous at the same time powerful. So the three basic points. If in the examination they ask you the strategic advantage of Magad, you will be in a position to answer that. Yes? Okay. Now, the yes, no, some have to say something. Feedback loop. Magad, most powerful Mahajanpada, location, iron access, and trade. Now, the 6th century BC was also one of the most important periods in what we call as Indian subcontinental history. Because of trade, we see the rise of first currency in India, which is called the punch-marked coins. I will discuss punch-marked coins. I will show them to you in art and culture and numismatics. But these are very simply very crude type of coins. Different shapes were there, and they were mostly made out of either silver or copper, but mostly silver was common. They are called punch mark because they used to have marks only on the front, close to 1 to 2, in certain cases 5, But the point is that the marking is the punch mark which used to happen on the obverse or on the front with the back being blank, made these coins the first coinage in India which was circulated for now the next 2 to 300 years. We'll discuss that. The simple point is that the trade aspect allowed for currency to rise. When I'm talking about trade, it automatically means that there were cities connected to each other, and that was basically done through, I'll come back to this concept, that was done through what we call as the Uttar Path and the Dakshin Path. Dakshin. See, there will emerge one trade route which will basically connect the west to the east, and there will also emerge an alternative route which will simply connect the north to the south. And Patliputra was actually at the epicenter of both and was very, very important. Over above that, this route was not just connected to India, but further went to Central Asia. And therefore, we have external trade and we have internal trade. Something which we saw during the Indus Valley civilization. Now we see it in the Mahajanpada phase. So therefore, the Mahajanpada phase, you have two trade routes developing, which in turn leads to the concept of punch mark coins to get developed. And over and above that, Magad was at the epicenter of all. So the 3 points I'm making, which is Magad's importance, punch mark coins, which you need to remember for this period, and the revival of internal external trade. If you understand these 3 basic points at prima facie at face value, then I will go into Magad dynasty's rulers, 3 important rulers you have to remember, and then I'll just read it out of the PPT. Are we all on the same page with regards to what we are doing right now? Yes, no? You have to be more. Okay, come on. Very good. Perfect. Yes, punch mark coins are coins which were issued for the first time by these Mahajanpadas. Crude coins, no uniformity, but was flowing through the Indian subcontinent at this point of time. So let's first discuss now Magad and dynasties. See, first things first, what is a dynasty? Dynasty means ruling family. So the person who basically was able to make Magad what it was in the period of the 6th century BC was a person called Bimbisara. Then his successor, his son Ajatashatru, and Udayan, 1, 2, 3, are the 3 most important which you need to know here. Further, there's one called Kalasoka. I will discuss that because Buddhism, Jainism, Kalasoka is important. And last ruler of this dynasty is Dhanananda. Now, $1 million question is, do I need to learn the dates? And the answer to that question is what? No, I don't care about these dates because this is not a college level examination. I just care about their sequence. So if in the examination you are able to understand that Bim, Aj, Ud, Kal, Dhan, if you are able to put them in chronological order in this way, where you know that Dhanananda is the last one and the first one is Bimbisara, then my work is done, your work is done vis-a-vis the examination. So Bimbisara, Ajatashatru, Udayan, Kalashoka and Dhanananda are the ones names which you need to remember. This is without fail you have to remember. Others are totally on your shraddha, on your devotion, how much you want to learn. I only want you to learn 5 of these. Now, a very important disclaimer to everybody, and please pay attention. There's a person called Bindusara and there's a person called Bimbisara. Bimbisara is the founder of the Magad dynasty. Bindusara is the father of Ashoka, who's a Maurya. So Bimbi and Bindu are 2 different things. Please understand this difference. In the examination, please do pay attention to Bimbi and Bindu. I hope you will be able to not get confused because previously I've seen students who mix up these 2. Bindu is the father of Ashoka. Bimbi is the founder of the Haryanka dynasty and therefore the Magad's founder ruler. Now, for the purpose of the examination, let me write down what you need to remember. First, you need to remember the sequence of dynasty. Very standard type of question which comes in the examination. Haryanka, Shishunga, Nanda, HSN. Here there's no issue. Thereafter, we need to know about Bimbisara, Ajatashatru, and Udayan. I will come back to Kalasoka and Dhanananda later. You will see Dhanananda will play a very important role in our movie. But Bimbisara is the founder, first person in India or ruler to have standing army. He is the one who founded the city of Rajgir and was able to make the Magad dynasty very powerful. He is also an contemporary of Buddha and Mahavira. Contemporary means that he met Buddha and Mahavira or saw Buddha and Mahavira operate in front of his own eyes. Basically contemporaries to each other. Ajatashatru was a devotee of Buddha and is also a contemporary of Buddha and Mahavira. Bimbisara also had a very good quality, which is that he used to believe in what is called as matrimonial alliances, which is that he used to marry to basically avoid warfare. Ajatashatru, a devotee of Buddha and a contemporary of Buddha and Mahavira, Buddhism and Jainism. Udayan is the one who shifted capital from Rajgir to Patliputra. Contemporary means that they lived together. You and me are contemporaries of each other. So, very simply, Bimbisara, Ajatashatru, Udayan. Very simple. The concept of matrimonial alliance, contemporary, founder, devotee, contemporary, and shifting of capital. Can you remember what is given on this slide? I'm again trying to simplify everything to the point where you just have to concentrate on certain things with me. Haryanka, Shishunga, Nanda, the concept of matrimonial alliance, the concept of Rajgir, contemporary Buddha, founder, having standing army, devotee of Buddha, and Ajatashatru being a contemporary of Buddha himself. Udayan is the one who shifted the capital. If you want to go into further detail, be my guest, but that is not necessary for the purpose of the examination as of right now. We have not seen a question which goes beyond this depth as of right now. UPSC can ask anything, but we will not do a thesis on Magad. So if somebody asks you why was Magad Magad, and what is the sequence and what are the rulers? If I will take the name Kalashoka, if I will take the name Udayan, if I will take the name Dhanananda, you will not say, sir, who Nanda, who Dhanananda? You will tell me that yes, Dhanananda, last ruler of the Magad dynasty. Can I move on? Because here we basically finish this theme. Yes? Very Very good. So we have understood the Magad part. We've understood the ruler part. Now let's just understand everything. What is Haranka, Shishunga, Nanda? Families. Families. These three come from the same family. These four come from the same family. These two come from the same family. Family is dynasty. A same ruler could have, a same polity could have multiple dynasties ruling it. Dinesh, Anu, why Rajgi shifted to Patliputra? Patliputra more epicenter, more than that, better placed, and it was actually a much bigger city. Rajgi is a smaller city in that regard. All for strategic reasons in that sense. So, anybody have any issue in Magad? You can ask me. Don't have to sit there thinking I will not answer. Neil Kamal and Ankit and all, please just write. Don't write your doubts in doubt section. Just write it in the chat itself so that I can see it. Kalashoka is known for the Buddhist council. We'll discuss that. The second Buddhist council under Kalashoka. We'll discuss that separate issue. We are not concentrating on when I come to Buddhism. Before I go to the economic part and revise it, are we clear about Magad? Because Magad will play a very important role in Alexander. So I need to know if you know that or not. Magad clear, sir. Very good. Now, when we talk about the economic value, we know that through multiple literary and archaeological evidences, there was a process of population growth in the Gangetic Valley. But the most important feature of this period was the rise of punch mark coins in this period, which is the first time we see any form of currency appear in the Indian subcontinent. 3 families, 5 rulers, 1 kingdom. Yes, we know it. Yes. So different families ruled dynasties by defeating another family. Yes, standard process. Standard process. How the concept of Janpadas and Mahajanpadas came. Dharmendra, were you there in last week? Because again, you're asking me something which I have explained last week itself. No. So I asked you before this. Mahajanpadas and Janpadas come about because of the process of the later Vedic period. And later Vedic period is the period of territorial state formation. That is the Janpadas come. And then from Janpadas comes Mahajanpadas. So that is a natural process of evolution of state formation from the later Vedic period. So now let's not go backwards, which is that from later Vedic period we see territorial state formation that in turn leads to Janpadas. Janpadas consolidate themselves to 16 Mahajanpadas. 16 Mahajanpadas, the most important ruler who emerges, or the rule or area which emerges as the most victorious is Magad. Within Magad we have 3 dynasties and 5 rulers which you have to remember. This is a process which is happening in the political sphere. In the economic sector, we have urbanization, we have trade and rise of currency in India. We have till this point not seen any form of currency appear. This is a very important thing which will emerge at this point of time. Now, for the purpose of the examination, because UPSC loves asking terms, you have to remember the different terms which were used for the Panchmark coins. Kahapana, Nikka, Kamsa, Pada, Masaka, and Kanika. Kanika is the name which we use till today. Kanika, the name comes out of the fact that it is a reference to the coinage or currency in that regard. And the most standard word which was used was Nishka. Nishka is a word which you will see throughout history as a word which refers to currency. And this is a very significant development for the period which we are talking about. Because, see, if somebody asks you on the road tomorrow, when did first currency appear in the Indian subcontinent? The question is what? When did first currency appear in the Indian subcontinent? Yes, 6th century BCE. Very standard understanding. We'll come back to this when we talk about art and culture and numismatics. I will show you, I have images of Panchmark coins also, but it's a separate discussion, more suited for art and culture. At the same point of time, we see gift and sale of land. So therefore, land was a very important, what we call as marker of wealth. Further, we have different types of words which are used for workers, and the Dasa Dasi tradition comes through. And because there is also currency, we see daily wage workers, which is that people who work for money. So basically, the concept of labor and slavery both existed together. Urban centers will emerge at this point of time. There are different terms which are used for the different types of cities, and these are terms which we still use, ironically. See, in text we see Pura. Pura is a word which is used for a city or a town. Often it has a little bit of fortifications to protect it. Then you have Nagara, which is a smaller town. Nigama, which is a market town. Gama and Nagara are basically small, but a bigger would be a Pura. And then you have Rajdhani, which would be a capital city, a word which we till today use. Nagaraka, a small town. Mahanagar, a big city, a term which we again still use today. The Kamakaras is labor. So if I put it into a gradation, you have Gama and Nagara. Then you have Pura. Then you have Mahanagara. And then you have Rajdhani. Now, I'm basically telling you the genesis of terms which we use till today. Mahanagar is a word which is used for metro cities. Rajdhani is a word which we still use for capitals. These terms we see in the 6th century BC coming through. And that is why we know that the biggest Mahanagars at this point of time were Champa, Rajgriha, Shravasti, Saketa, Kaushambi, Varanasi. The very big cities. Till today are one of the most important cities which exist in the northern sector. So, what we see in text, we also see in archaeological evidences. And therefore, 6th century BC truly was the period of what we call as urbanization, town formation, and city formation. Last but not the least is the fact that at this point of time, we also see trade routes coming through. And the trade routes at this point of time, you have Uttar Path. Uttar Path had 2 different subsections. If you live in North India, you would know that the Indian Railways also has 2 major tracks in Northern Railways. If you will ever travel in Northern Railways, there's one train which will go via Kanpur and the other train will go via Lucknow. This exact concept comes through the Uttar Path itself, because one will go via Lahore, Jalandhar, Saharanpur, then Gorakhpur towards Bihar, Bengal, and there's a southern route which is there till today. Same exact trade route we have in the form of a Northern Railways formation, which is Lahore, Bhatinda, Hastinapur, Delhi, Kanpur, Lucknow, Varanasi, Allahabad. So you will have one line which will come till Kanpur or Lucknow, one will go till Gorakhpur, or they are parallel to each other. So very simply, this concept is because there were 2 lines which were there even in the Uttar Path, the northern Uttar Path and the southern Uttar Path. And then you have the Dakshin Path, which basically connected Magad with the southern ports, specifically the Gujarat coast and the coast of Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. So very simply, the period which we're talking about, the Mahajanpada period, you are asking me what is Purisas. See, this term which you see here, Karamkaras, Purisas, these are 2 terms which are used for labor. Dasa Dasi we already know is for slavery. So, Mahajanpada period, 6th century BC. There are standard things which you need to remember. Uttar Path, Dakshin Path, Panchmark coins, Magad, and its rulers. If this is clear, then what I'll do is that I'll make that timeline and consolidate everything till this point, because I will thereafter go into religious history, which is a little bit off track in that regard. Yes or no? Come on. Yes? Clear? Come on, be more vocal. First R is over, that's it. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's consolidate everything. And see, after this, we go into the next module. Okay. Think of it as the first major master timeline I'm giving you. Terms, these, see, as I said, if you want to drink what is called as the immortal potion, Amrit, then you also have to drink a little bit of poison, Vish, which is that if you have to go through this process understanding everything, the factual part you have to remember. I told you the 15-minute rule should help you, and I reiterate that point once I'm into more terms when it comes to Buddhism. But as I said, there's one part which is conceptual and more theoretical, which is 90% of the questions you can answer to what we are doing here. But the concept of what we call as the factual 10% of the questions, I will show you previous questions also today. So don't worry, you will see that it's more conceptual than factual. Factual questions 10%. The problem is students what they do is that they judge history from the 10% and not the 90%. Specifically geography also in that sense. They say that remembering dams is more important than understanding concepts. Same way, understanding concepts is equally important in history than understanding facts. 10% of the questions are like that only. Okay, I'll give you a small break after this. Don't worry. Mostly I give it after 1.5 hours. That is mostly the right time to give it. I'll see to it where we are and then we'll move on. Okay. So first set of revision, 2 million, 10,000. Thereafter 4,000, 2,600, 1,500, 1,000, 600, 500. Okay. Now, no state, no economy, no trade. We'll talk about it, Ankit. Ashoka is after this theme, Buddhism, Jainism. And what you're writing is also technically not true. So many historians, when you write, who are these historians? Ashoka did convert to Buddhism, but not actually convert to Buddhism. He absorbed or adopted. We'll talk about Dhamma. Don't worry, all these things will be talked about. That is Maurya. Have to wait for the part C, I think. By part C, we'll be there. Okay. No state, no economy, no trade, hunting, gathering. We have a small population, fire, ice ages, crude tools. Then we have Mesolithic, which is no state, no economy, no trade, hunting and gathering, but plus domestication of animals, plus rituals and burials. The concept of warmer temperature, microliths. Neolithic, early state formation, complex society, sedentary nature, rituals, agriculture plus hunting and gathering, and you have no trade. Thereafter, industrial civilization, mature state, naturalistic religion, complex society, town planning, and trade, internal and external. Anybody has any issues here? And I'll be opening up for the live call feature also. So I'll ask you to call me if you have doubts other than this in the after I've made this timeline. So we'll use that also. Live call feature should come in your doubt section. There will be a call feature, a request will come to me, and then I can take up that call. If you've not used it, try it once. But you should have an earphone and everything so that I can hear you also. More specifically, you should have a mic. Because a lot of you, what I saw last time was you were using a headphone which did not have a mic. So you can hear me, but you can't say anything. So you should have a mic in that. Okay. The early Vedic period. Pastoralism. Tribal state. No economy. No economy. Tribal state. No trade. Naturalistic. Women. No currency. And the concept of cattle as well. Thereafter, later Vedic period, agriculture plus territorial monarchical states, no trade, Vedic Brahmanism, women, men, Varna system, and social discrimination. And this is also the period of no currency, land is wealth. Is women considered equal? Not more or less. Still a patriarchal society, but women have still better rights than in the later Vedic period. What is the direct call, sir? I can call if I have any doubt. No, I will tell you the protocols for asking the doubts. Don't worry. Can we say that the concept of war or territorial conquest? No. War was happening here also. Dharmendra, again, you were not there last time. War is happening for cattle here. Warfare is happening in the early Vedic period also. Did you watch the video again? Did you watch last week's class? Yes or no? Still you're asking. War is based warfare, territorial warfare, sure, later Vedic, not Mahajan brothers. Later Vedic. So this is where we have added something today. Please pay attention. Monarchies and Gana Sanghas. Magad dominates agriculture plus animal husbandry. Internal and external trade. This is the first major change. Punch marked coins and eastward expansion. Taxation emerges. So, and basically this period is also the period of Buddhism, Jainism, and Ajivikism. Right now, anybody has any issue to this point? I within the past 1 hour consolidated twice. Women were treated unequally literally period. Yes, really unequally. Dinesh, again, I think not there in the last class. The concept of women's domination by men or men dominating women comes in the literary period. Their access to education and economic resources were taken away. Now, till this point, does anybody has any issues? This is the consolidation of what we did last week and what we've done till this first 1 hour. Taxation was there in the margin period. Obviously, it will emerge here. Thereafter, it will obviously be there. No issues. Now, for the person who asked me about the live call feature, understand this point that it's a feature which is only there if you're live with me in the session. First, second, most important, it has to be related to the topic. Third, it's not a radio, so you don't have a random conversation with me. It has to be very simply, very specific to what we're discussing today. If there's a question which you can't type or you can't ask or are not able to articulate, I'll be happy to hear it from you and answer you in front of the class. You should be very clear. You will be heard by everybody. My answer will also be heard by everybody. Most important thing has to be in English because that is a very important part of your personality development. So if anybody wants to call, please call. I'm allowed live calls. So if you want to try or something like that, why not? Yes, because with this we finish our second module. We'll enter then module number 3. Anybody has any doubt other than what we discussed till this point? Any issue? I'll be happy to take up questions. If you want me to repeat something, tell me. There is no issue in asking me to repeat. No, sir. Clear, sir. I want everybody's consent then to move forward or take a break here. Yes. Avani, I'm going to give you a 10-minute break. Don't worry. Just 1 second. Okay. Now see. Before we go for a 10-minute break here, I'll just give you a basic overview of what we're going to do now. We are moving to module number 3. This is a purely religious history module. Because UPSC somehow loves Buddhism and Jainism and Ajivikism, we have to discuss this. Out of all modules, this is the only module which is basically a little bit more philosophical and religious. Out of RS Sharma, there's 1 chapter, and out of 12th class NCERT, there's 1 more chapter. 2 chapters you have to cover if you want to cover over and above the PPT. PPT is your main source. Thereafter, there are the other sources. NCERT plus PPT is a must. More than that, my PPT is a amalgamation of optional level books, academic books, at least 6 to 7 sources. That is why PPT first, then the NCERT, but NCERT is important. And once we come back from this break, we will start a new discussion vis-a-vis Vedic Brahmanism, the concept of moksha, salvation, and then we'll discuss the story of or the history of Ajivikism, Buddhism, Jainism. Important for the examination, so don't be basically you have to pay a lot of attention to this module for sure. So I'll take a break here, and it is what 1:15. We'll be back at 1:25 and 1:26 rather. I've taken 1 minute. 1:26 when we are back, we will go for the heterodox religions. I can mention is enough. Yes, these are the only NCERTs which are there. Can you move to additional PPT? Because I don't know what you mean by that. These you get annotated PPTs. This is what you will get. Standard protocol as always. I'll leave you here so that you can, if you are waiting for me to come back, you can revise as we do. We'll be back at 1:26. See you, and we take a break for lunch at 3 o'clock. See you. Yes, Chana. Welcome back. Okay. Right. So we start with module number 3, and we have to cover Buddhism Jainism. Now, I'm waiting 2-3 minutes for everybody to join back because this is an extremely important discussion we have now, fundamental to understanding of Buddhism and Jainism. Okay. Can I start again? Something very important, very fundamental to our discussion, which is why was there a need for new traditions to rise? This is the theoretical part, will not be given in any standard book. Okay. So when I talk about heterodox traditions, I mean Ajivikism, Buddhism, and Jainism. Now, prima facie, can you tell me why would there be a need for religion when Vedic Brahmanism is already there? Or what we call early Hinduism is already there? Then what is the need for new religions? What is the need for new religions? These are the new religions which are appearing. Rigid Varna system, disagreement, differentiation. Rigid Varna system, dominance of Brahmins. Okay. See, if you go by erosion, social evils, if you go by Buddhism, Jainism, or Ajivikism, if you talk to them, they will say that it's moral corruption, this, that, larger concepts of social degeneration. However, there's a much larger concept or process which is at play here. And what I'm going to give you is the real reason for why Buddhism and Jainism coming through. Yes, it's salvation and all. We will discuss that. All of that seems to be the reason, but the reason is not that. Let's try to understand why was there a need for Buddhism, Jainism as alternative paths. Now, pay attention to what I'm arguing. See, you have Vedic Brahmanism. Questions cannot be made from here. But as my student, it is extremely important that you know these things, because this will tell you why things happen in our society and what is the reason for certain things in our, what we call as Indian society, to be the way they are. Now, Vedic Brahmanism is based on the concept of fourfold Varna system. You have Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Now, the most important feature of this system is that these categories are hierarchical. In the sense that is the first Varna, the second Varna, the third Varna, the fourth Varna. And it is rigid. Rigid in the sense that there is no chance of upward mobility. Upward mobility. Wherein you cannot move up the different Varnas. That is that Vaishya cannot become second, Kshatriyas cannot become first, Shudras cannot become third. The simple point is you are in that position according to the fourfold Varna system, and you cannot very simply change that. Now, this worked very well for a very long time. But in the 6th century BCE, trade emerges again. Prosperity comes through and wealth formation is there. Now, if trade is going to happen, which of the following Varnas is going to actually benefit the most? The Vaishyas, very good. So the Vaishyas now start to gain money, gain capital and wealth. But the problem is that Vaishyas are not given the same type of position as Kshatriyas or Brahmins. More than that, trade is something which is considered problematic within the Vedic Brahmanical tradition, because crossing water bodies is considered to be about something related to impurity. You have heard this concept of Sat Samudra Par, wherein even Gandhi was subjected to this type of understanding, where if you are crossing water bodies, there is a certain type of impurity which comes through, and you can lose your Varna and caste. We will discuss that when we discuss caste. But simple point is, within the Vedic Brahmanical fold, Vaishyas are not given that much importance. The importance which they deserve, they do not get. Very simply, you have all the money in the world, but still you cannot buy power. So very simply, they have no access to power, and they have no way to get access to it also. So the first point which we know is that the Vaishya community started to get frustrated with Vedic Brahmanism. If you are in their place, you would get frustrated, yes or no? Yes, because I can have crores of rupees, but I still cannot do anything with it, because I will always be called the third Varna, and therefore I will never have access to power, or don't even have a way to buy into the Kshatriya concept. So first thing is that Vaishyas were not liking the Vedic Brahmanical fold. The 6th century prosperity was basically now making the Vaishyas more and more frustrated. Now, the next thing is that the Kshatriyas were also getting frustrated, because they can be rulers, but still second Varna. At the end of the day, the Brahmin will always be the first Varna. So the ruling class felt that we are the most powerful class, but subordinated to the first Varna. So there's a certain type of feeling which is developing within both the Kshatriya community plus the Vaishya community, that Vedic Brahmanistic worldview is subordinating and not allowing for prosperity or power to get consolidated. Make sense? Are you able to understand the frustration of these two classes? Yes or no? Come on, you have to be more vocal. Yes? Okay. Now, based on this, it doesn't seem as a coincidence that the audience or the followers of Buddhism and Jainism were mostly Vaishyas and Kshatriyas. Very simply, as much as Buddhism and Jainism would argue that our religion is based on a new understanding of salvation, truth, this and that, the simple point is they tapped into the frustration of the two biggest Varnas and one of the two most frustrated Varnas in order to become more relevant, and that's why Buddhism emerged as one of the most popular and will basically dominate Vedic Brahmanism for the next close to 500 years. Because Buddhism, very simply, when it came through, criticized the Varna system and argued that the first position should be given to the Kshatriyas and the second position should be given to the Vaishyas. And very simply, the point was that Brahmins for them did not exist within the Varna system itself, though they were able to tap into the Kshatriya and the Vaishyas. One thing is very interesting, which nobody has asked me till this point, is that somehow their attitude towards the Shudras was still the same, which is that this was a totally commercial and power-oriented change or need for new social outlook, and they did not want to totally destroy the system which was there. They changed it so as to become relevant, so as to basically please the certain section which was frustrated the most out of this whole process of Vedic Brahmanism based 4-4 Varna system. Are you now able to peer through? Are you now able to remove the curtain or the veil which protects this, or in a way gives us an understanding of how these religions were coming through? Because I'll tell you the other argument which is given by these religions themselves, and that is related to the concept of moral corruption, which I will discuss. But very simply, Buddhism, Jainism, when they emerged, they very simply tapped into the frustration of the powerful and the wealthy community, and therefore became relevant. Understand one thing: for a religion to survive, what does it need? For a religion to survive, what does it need? Very good. Followers. And for followers to be there needs to be a certain strategy. And that strategy was this: the popularity, the strategy came from the way they oriented themselves. And as one of you said, money is also important, because the Vaishya community pushed in a lot of money into these new religions, which we will discuss as we go on. Right? There were same things about with the first one. I needed the validation from that. Was there? No, Shamishta, that is not the reason. The simple point is that there's a certain type of arrogance, or you can say a certain type of hierarchical understanding which developed at this point of time, and the Kshatriya community did not like that. As a ruler, you would not like to be subordinated by a priest or a Brahmin, and therefore you wanted to be more powerful and encompassing. Buddhism put the Kshatriya, the ruler, first, and the Vaishya community was given a much more stronger, what we call as presence in the society. But more than that, if you were a Buddhist merchant, you were not outcasted or removed from the society because you traveled. With external trade coming through, you needed to be assimilated, and you needed to be in a way appreciated. Vedic Brahmanism does not appreciate foreign travel. Is this making sense? Because if this is making sense, nobody is asking you in the examination, but for your general knowledge, I will go into the argument which these religions give. Is this part of the story clear? Come on. I am right now basically teaching you at BA honors level. This you will not find in standard books. This is BA honors level. Okay. Very good. Now, let's talk about the other argument. Let's talk about the other argument. What these religions would argue. See, these religions would argue that there was moral corruption, materialism, social degeneration, sorrow, sadness, inequality, death, disease, all which started to spread. By Brahmins is always first, Anu, the concept comes out of Vedic Brahmanism, which is who controls knowledge, controls their position. So Brahmins will obviously give themselves the first position. So this was the 6th century social existence. Their argument was very simple, that with money, with wealth came moral corruption. People started to get intoxicated. No real moral values were there. Materialistic impulse, money, you want more and more money. Social degeneration, sorrow, sadness, disease, inequality, death, all because of the prosperity of the 6th century, which is in a way true also. That basically the more wealth is generated in the economy, the more socially, what we have, what is called social cohesion starts to change. But more than that, it also leads to moral corruption. Money basically had degenerated society. So if you go by the argument, it is the frustration of the Vaishyas and Kshatriyas plus the concept of moral degeneration and materialism that in turn leads to rise of new religions. So can we basically understand this and argue in this fashion? Are these two basic points making sense? Am I logically telling you what is happening, or is this some form of random thing which is happening? Is this logically linked to how the economy and the society is changing, and how there is a new way of understanding in that regard? Yes, very good, very good, very good. So we all now understand the social dynamics of Indian subcontinent and how there is automatically a need because of the way Vedic Brahmanism works in that regard. Now, just to summarize this rise of mercantile classes, orthodox Brahmanical traditions don't like that. Varna identity is crystallized. Need for new social outlook because of materialism. Now, when we talk about materialism, it's not that in the Vedic tradition or Vedic Brahmanism, there's no concept of renunciation. Renunciation means to give up. That is the easiest. If you have too much money and you are based, mercantile means merchant community. Very simply, if you are very wealthy and you are getting morally corrupt, do one thing, give up that. So, within Vedic Brahmanism, there is a tradition, we already know that, the concept of sannyasi. And yogis, tapsis, sannyasis are words which are basically used for people who give up everything and go into the, what we call as the forests. More than that, within the Vedic Brahmanistic understanding, there are different type of ashrams we should have. For example, brahmacharya, this is the period in which you study. Then you have grihastha, when you become married and become a householder. Then vanprastha, start to wander the forest for knowledge. And then sannyasi, total renunciation. But the problem with this tradition is that it is total renunciation. That I'm a merchant, I give up everything. If I'm a merchant, would I want to give up everything and become a sannyasi? Logical question? No. So very simply, the renunciatory tradition within Vedic Brahmanism does not allow for a householder to have wealth also and have status also and have knowledge also. And therefore, this was not something which was chosen by the people which were there. So let us now understand the concept of what these religions are offering. What we've done till this point, very simply, is we've understood why did these religions appear, what was the reason for that, and how does it align with the Vedic Brahmanistic fold. Anybody has any doubt till this point, you can call, you can ask me a question, you can ask me to repeat, whatever it may be, please ask me right now. Because thereafter, I will presume that you understand what we are doing till this point. Yes? No doubt? Renunciation means is to give up. Give up. Sannyasis are renunciant. Renunciation, what do sannyasis do? They leave their house, they leave everything, and then they move forward. That is basically renunciation. Okay. Renunciation, ascetic, monk, renunciant, all are the same thing. Ascetic, monk, renunciant, sannyasi, same. Okay, now we've understood the reason. We understood the reason for why did the new religions come through. Now let's look at the new understanding. Now, how the Brahmins were stopping households from renunciation. They were not stopping households from renunciation. As a householder, I would not like to see. I'll come to that. The basic. This is the point we're going to discuss now. For getting moksha, you had to give up everything. This is not something which everybody will do. So the path is also problematic. I'm coming to that. So see, Brahmins are not stopping. But as a householder, I don't want to become a sannyasi. But if I don't become a sannyasi, I don't get respect. So I'm not saying that renunciation, which is the concept of giving up, which Buddha also argued, is very specific to Buddhism. It is there in Vedic Brahmanism also. But it is basically placed in such a way that nobody wants to do it. So let's try to understand this. See, now I'm going into the metaphysical, and I'm going to discuss something with you very important right now, which is the concept of moksha, which I will do with you again when I will discuss six schools of philosophy. Now, before I do that, I have a very important disclaimer. And the disclaimer is that does moksha exist? Does Atma exist? Does Buddhism work? Does Jainism give you salvation? How does it work? Will it work? Should I do it? And the answer to that question is, I don't care. Because for me, this is a topic which has to be taught for UPSC. UPSC is asking you this question. And this is not Asta channel. So Atma is ghost, Atma is this, Atma is that. Does it exist or not? If I do this, will it happen? I don't care. For me, it doesn't really matter. I will tell you what it is. I will tell you how it works. But thereafter, does it work or not? Of no purpose to me. So the question should not be, if I do this, will it happen? No, I don't know that. So very simply, we will keep this discussion purely exam-based, because what happened with Buddhism, Jainism is students become emotional. And when they become emotional, they start to basically learn Buddhism in a way that they have to become a Buddhist only. Don't have to do that. Very simply, whatever I'm doing here is more than enough to answer any question. And any philosophical question you have, I would be happy to say it out loud. But thereafter, you know my answer. My answer to that question is going to be what? It's going to be what? I don't care. Simple. So we are not here to do a thesis. There are departments called Buddhist studies, day and night doing research on this. Let's keep it simple. If this is acceptable to you, then I'll start with this concept of moksha. Can I start with moksha? Okay, great. Now see, there's something called the cycle of birth and rebirth. And the concept is very simple, that we all have a body and we also have a soul or Atma. This Atma was given to us by God, and very simply, God gives you that life energy, which is called Atma or soul. But this body is perishable. It ages over a period of time, and therefore the body will die, but the Atma will remain the same. And how we change clothes, the Atma changes body. So the Atma will keep on changing the body it is in, and it will be caught up in this concept of birth, rebirth. You don't remember it, I don't remember it, but our soul remembers. And very simply, it is in an endless cycle of birth and rebirth. Now, the soul does not like that. The soul does not like that. The soul wants only one thing: to become part of God again. And basically, break the cycle of birth and rebirth. And this process of breaking the cycle of birth and rebirth is called salvation or moksha, sometimes also called nirvana. Very simply, when the soul is able to become a part of God from where it came, it is at that moment that you can get salvation and your soul gets a break. And very simply, that break is from the cycle of birth and rebirth. This is the concept of moksha. Moksha basically means when your Atma gets salvation or moksha and it becomes part of God from where it is an ansh or a part of. Now, the million-dollar question is, how do you get moksha? Till this point, everybody's with me. Yes? Okay, very good. Now, the question is, how do you get moksha or salvation? And the answer to this question, what Vedic Brahmanism argued, is a philosophy of Buddhism. No, this is a standard philosophy, common to everyone. The concept of moksha is common to everybody. Vedic Brahmanism also, Buddhism also, Jainism also, everyone. So how do you get moksha or salvation? The concept, what Vedic Brahmanism would argue, is through sacrifices and rituals, you get what you call as punya or ritual merit. And once you reach a certain threshold, you will get moksha. Very simply, within Vedic Brahmanism, the way to get salvation is through gaining ritual merit. And how do you get ritual merit? You get it through rituals and sacrifices. For example, feed 1000 Brahmins, do this form of yajna, do that form of yajna, give the Brahmins something, do this form of dan, this, that, basically dan dakshina. Now, can everybody do sacrifices and rituals? Yajna means havan. Can everybody do sacrifices and rituals? It's an expensive thing, expensive process. Everyone does not have access. And even if I have access, the Vaishyas and Kshatriyas now started to look at this whole process as a form of suspicion. that for everything there's a sacrifice, for everything there's a ritual. Why should we go through these elaborate rituals to get punya? And it is here that the frustration with both the social order and path to salvation, it is here that it allows for Ajivikism, Buddhism, Jainism to give you alternative paths to moksha and emerge as new religions. So if I bring all of this together, the reason for rise of new religions is what? Is frustration with social order, frustration with path to salvation of Vedic Brahmanism, plus ritual and sacrifice based religion, and need for new social outlook, new religions, alternative paths. Is this making sense? Dinesh, you said then they can do meditation instead of sacrifice. So which is cheaper, meditation or sacrifice? Or which everybody can do? Meditation. So is the basic context of Buddhism and Jainism clear? Yes, if you want to add, yes, Avani, very good. If you want to add to this, materialism plus social degeneration. So anybody has any doubt? You want to call, you want to ask me something which you're not able to articulate generally? It's open to everyone. Feature is available, but still nobody wants to call. Very good. Materialism means a certain type of lust for money, lust for wealth in that sense. Previous two slides. This is the gist of everything what we've done till this one. Now again, tell me one thing. When you started the journey with me of ancient medieval art and culture or ancient medieval, did you think that it was this logical to understand how things developed in India or the Indian subcontinent? Meaning that this is not something which is happening randomly. It's basically a logical end or a logical evolution of a society which started at Paleolithic, and with more and more complexity coming through, there is more and more chances for the concept of rebellion, the concept of alternative paths to develop. So very simply, it's a way of integrating everything together and understanding that everything is evolving in a certain sense. And that evolution is from frustration of social order, frustration of rituals and sacrifices, for need for new social outlook, material and social degeneration, and therefore new religions come through. Okay. So we all are clear about the context. Context is clear? Yes, then we move forward. Then we move to the Ajivikism. Ajivikas were the first heterodox religion. Yes, okay. Once I'm done with Ajivikism, I'll give you a 5-minute break so that you can digest that, and then we'll go to Buddhism. Okay. Now, out of all the heterodox religions or the new religions which emerged, the first are called Ajiviks, Ajivikism or Ajiviks. Ajiviks. Now, the person who basically put forward this philosophy, his name is Makhali Gosala. Basically, his name is a mixture of two things. Father is Makhali, and he was born in a Goshala. So that is why Makhali Goshala. That is the name of the leader who took the Ajivik sect forward, or Ajivik religion forward. Religion or sect. See, the difference between sect and religion is sect is a smaller group, is still developing, and religion is a proper institutionalized religion with basic forms of text which give you rules and regulations. So they all start as sects and become religion. Is this recipe still working to establish religions? Vivek, again, makes no sense. The question makes no sense, and no, it doesn't work like that. Because the society today is multi-religious, and that is not the way it works. Sect equals to cult. No, cult is a smaller word. Cult becomes a sect becomes a religion. That is the way it goes. Because within religions you can have sects, within sects you can have cults. So basically these are three gradational terms in that sense. Now, what will come in the examination is not Makhali Gosala, because that is a very net which is assistant professor type examination. That is type of question it is. What will come more is basically the theoretical aspect, which is that what is their core philosophy? What is their core philosophy? Now, in Vedic Brahmanism, how do you get salvation? In Vedic Brahmanism, how do you get salvation? Rituals, sacrifices, punya. Very good. Great. No, not meditation, Sushmita. Not meditation. It is rituals and sacrifices. Now, Ajiviks are a little bit cool. They argue that if you are going to get salvation, you will automatically get it. Basically, there's no need for rituals and sacrifices, because if it is in your niyati or destiny to get salvation, you will get salvation. Very simply, give up everything, meditate, and wait for the day of judgment to come. And on that day, if your niyati, if it is in your destiny to get salvation, you'll get it. Dinesh, don't bring in those concepts right now. That's a very later text. Don't do that. I know that, but that's Hinduism, not Vedic Buddhism. Early Hinduism is mostly based on rituals and sacrifices. Don't mix up things. I know what I'm saying. When you're saying bhakti, you're going straight to 15th century, which is basically Delhi Sultanate Mughal period. So don't mix up things. If I'm not using a term, I'm not using a term. So don't use the word bhakti here. Bhakti is either 7th century South Indian bhakti or 15th century, 13th, 14th century North Indian bhakti. So don't do that. Now, Ajivikism argues that the fact is there is no point in doing rituals. Macaulay Gosala is the person who is the one who institutionalized it and make it better. You have written Macaulay Gosala. Yes, he's the person who made it more popular. The core philosophy is called Ajivikism. Please pay attention. Somehow you are all doing. This is why. Very simple point. Ajivikism argues the way to salvation is niyati. If you ask a Ajivik, will I become an IS officer? The answer an Ajivik will give you is, if it is in your niyati, you will automatically become an IS officer. But if it is not in your niyati, you will not get it. Basically, everything is predetermined, everything is predestined, and human action has no consequences. Don't be an Ajivik, because as I said, does it work or not work? I don't really care, but I'm sure it will not work for UPSC. The simple point is that if in the examination you see the word niyati anywhere, you have to automatically mark Ajivik. And why is Ajivikism important for our discussion? Is because Ashoka was initially an Ajivik, and later he will adopt Buddhism. This point you just have to hold on to, because I will very simply discuss this in the context of Dhamma. But very simply, an Ajivik argues that rituals and sacrifices make no sense. Now are you able to understand fate, destiny, niyati? Yes. Now are you able to understand how a Brahmin will become a little bit frustrated by what an Ajivik is saying? If I'm an Ajivik, and if I go to a person and say, don't give him Dan Dakshina, don't give him any form of ritual money, don't do any sacrifices. If it is in your niyati, you will get it. If it's not in your niyati, you will not get it. Now you see, this will frustrate the Brahmanical community, because he is giving a totally alternative path, which very simply is based on doing nothing. This is how they undercut Vedic Brahmanism. So when we talk about Ajivikism, which is a sect which is based on the understanding of institutionalization by a person called Macaulay Gosala, Ajivik's core belief is that absolutely everything is predetermined by fate or niyati. Hence, human action has no consequences. You can do as many rituals as you want. You can do as many sacrifices as you want. You can be the best person in life. But if it is not in your niyati, you will not get it. They wore no clothes, gave up everything, lived as monks, waiting for their death to come. Therefore, they could know if they got their moksha or not. Bindusara and Ashoka, both were Ajiviks initially. A very important point you need to understand when I will discuss the Kalinga War with you later. So, very simply, the first heterodox sect to emerge was Ajivikism. So, till this point, we've understood why did heterodox religions come through, why was there a need for an alternative path, what is the concept of this alternative path, and we have also now discussed the first major alternative path given, which would undercut the Varna system and the Vedic Brahmanistic social order, which is the fact that niyati is the one which dictates everything, everything is predetermined, everything is pre-written, human action has no consequences, therefore Vedic rituals have no consequences. If it is in your fate, if it is in your destiny to get it, you will get it. If this is clear, I'll give you a short break so that you can digest this much. Then I'll move further to do Buddhism, because Buddhism is a long chapter. It's a larger discussion which may go through our discussion of the first part, which is pre-lunch and post-lunch. Are we all clear about this? If you have a doubt, feel free to call, feel free to ask me to repeat anything, everything you have to ask me that. I am ready to answer everything right now, because once I move forward, I presume that you know. That is the most important point. So everybody is with me till this point. Nobody has no issues, and therefore we all understand the new paths and we understand why these new paths emerged. We understand these two basic slides, which is the reason for the rise of new religions. And the simple point is the way Ajivikism was the first one to undercut everything. No issues? Great, perfect, very good. So let's now take a small break, understand all of this, come back, and then take the discussion forward. Because when we come back, we do Buddhism, one of the most asked and most repeated topics of UPSC. Please repeat the concept of rise of new religions. Vivek, again, rise of new religions, frustration of social order by Vaishyas and Kshatriyas. The path of salvation was based on rituals and sacrifices. The sacrifice-based religion was frustrating the second and the third Varna. The need for new social outlook comes from there. Materialism and social degeneration is something which these religions will argue for. All of these factors together create the audience for a new social outlook, which is Ajivikism, Buddhism, and Jainism. So, very simply, we will now take a small break, 10 minutes, and then when we come back, Buddhism, the most important module, what we will do today other than the Mauryas. Okay. So, we will come back at 2:25. And when we do that, half an hour context part of Buddhism, and then the councils, Mahayanic, Hinayanic, Vajrayanic Buddhism after the lunch period. The concept before it, as I said, Vedic Brahmanism based on ritual sacrifices, punya, getting you what we call as moksha. Over that 4 structure, rigid, cannot move. Okay, so I'll see you at 2:25. Ashoka's father was a Ajivik, so he automatically becomes a Ajivik. I have no idea who he is. Okay, welcome back. Okay. I don't know, Ankit, who you're referring to. I don't watch random videos of random people, and I have no idea who he is. Other than that, by using the term, he's obviously an early Hinduistic or early Hindu, but he then turns into Ajivik, then goes to Buddhism. But as I said, everybody has the right to their own understanding. Okay. Ashoka's father was a Ajik, so he automatically becomes a Ajik. Can we start again? Yes, sir. Okay. So now our discussion for the next half an hour is going to be about the most popular, the most what we call as dominating, and till Gupta period, one of the most ubiquitous religion, which is Buddhism. Buddhism had certain qualities which allowed it to be very, very popular. And left, right, and center, if you look at it, most of the rulers till the post-Gupta period were Buddhist. But in order to understand the story of Buddhism, let's try to understand the story of Buddha. And what is this basic concept of Buddhism? What is the Ashtang Marg and the Arthe Sachais? We'll discuss that. So now I'm pivoting away from Ajivikism to Buddhism. There are three basic things which you need to know in Buddhism. What is the story of Buddha? Second, the basic philosophy of Buddha or Buddhism, and the simple concept of councils and the subsects within Buddhism. These are the three basic type of questions which can be asked. Buddhist text, Jain text, I will discuss in art and culture when I will discuss literature with you. So the story is of a person called Siddhartha or Siddharth, born to Sudodana and Maya. He is basically, or Buddha was basically a son of a Kshatriya, of a very powerful ruler of the Shakya clan. But when Buddha was born, please pay attention, when Buddha was born, a priest saw him. And when the priest saw Maya's son Siddharth at Lumbini, he said that Buddha's body had 32 signs, which very simply are markers of two things. Either Sudodana's son or Maya's son is going to be the world conqueror, or he's going to be the world renunciator, which is that either he will conquer the world or he will be the biggest monk, ascetic, or the one who will give up everything. Now, as a son or as the father of this child, who is already a Kshatriya ruler, would you like your son to be a world renunciator or world renunciant? No, you will obviously want Siddhartha to be the world conqueror so that he can be the greatest ruler. As being a Kshatriya, he wanted his son to be like that itself. Now, the story goes that Siddhartha, therefore, was kept in all luxury. He had multiple palaces where he used to live in all luxury, and all the food, the wealth, and everything which was available to man which would give happiness was available to him. So Sudodana basically wanted to very simply shield Siddhartha from the sorrows of the world, to show the world that there is sorrow and dukh and other things, and he kept him in a lot of comfort. But Siddhartha did not like this type of life quite a lot, and by the age of 29, he was becoming a little bit more uncomfortable with the comforts of the palace. And a life-changing moment comes when he was standing in one of the balconies of his palace and he looked towards the city. Again, under Buddhist philosophy, the story goes like this, which is that when he was one day standing on his balcony, Buddha saw four things, or Siddhartha saw four things: a sick man, an old man, a corpse or dead body, and the third thing which he saw was a monk or an ascetic. Now, Buddha asked himself that, can money stop disease? Can money stop disease? The best example of this would be COVID-19. COVID-19 equally impacted rich, poor, everyone. Disease may be delayed, disease may be cured, but disease will come. And no amount of money can stop a disease which has progressed or is developing. And if it is basically a certain type of illness which is there, irrespective of whoever you are. So very simply, the first thing which Siddhartha realized, all the comforts of the palace, all the comforts of the money, but I will become sick one day for sure. Now comes the second fundamental question when he saw an old man. He saw an old man and then realized that money can't stop aging. It may delay it, but your biological degeneration of your body will happen irrespective of anything. You can do anything, everything. You can be Elon Musk, you can be Bezos, you can be anybody, you can be the ruler of this world, but still you will age. And therefore, he realized that again, this materialistic lifestyle which I have, this money which I have, it can't stop me from becoming older. And last but not the least, he saw the culmination of these two processes, which is a dead body. No amount of money can stop death. We can be sure about that. You can be Alexander, you could be Ashoka, you could be Samudragupta, you could be anybody. You have to die. The only truth of life which is guaranteed is death. I can't guarantee anything to you. If you ask me, can you give me a guarantee? I can't guarantee anything to you except for one thing, which is death. Except for anything, you will die for sure. We all will die. As much as it may be depressing, it may be a moment in which you are questioning a lot of things, but the greatest truth of life is death. And nobody takes their cars, their buildings, their money with them in their perishable body. So we all basically run after money, run after fame, run after power. But when it will come to the fateful moment, nothing will come with you. So Siddhartha realized one thing, that money is an illusion. Money can't fundamentally stop aging. Money can't fundamentally stop disease. Money can't stop your death. Then what is the point of the money? If it can't make me immortal, then what's the point? Then the ultimate truth of life cannot be money. At this point, everybody's with me. This is Buddhist philosophy for you. The three things which he sees as a problem. Okay, very good. Now Siddhartha looks for a solution. And the solution which he sees is the ascetic or monk. Very simply, he believed that if I give up everything, if I basically give up everything, then I will have nothing to lose. And if I have nothing to lose, if I have no attachments, then it is guaranteed that I will get moksha, I will get salvation. Because what keeps you here are your attachments: money, car, power, hunger, greed, lust. But if I become, very simply, I said 4 things. So these are 3 things here. 1, 2, 3, and this is 4. So the monk was the answer, which is that you very simply give up everything so that nothing keeps you here. But at this moment, Siddharth only thinks that asceticism or monk is the answer. He doesn't know the ultimate truth of life. He doesn't know the path. He's just a person looking for answers. So in the fateful moment in which he sees the 3 types of bodies, which is sick man, old man, and corpse, and he sees a solution in the monk, he gives up his palace, takes his horse, Kartanka, and goes after the monks. And 5 monks were there, and he says to them, I want to join you. Now the monks which he joined, very simply, were the monks who said that you give up everything. You give up on food, you give up on water, you give up on everything. We are very serious ascetics, and for us, giving up food is equally important. Now, Buddha will wander with these monks. However, there's certain type of uneasiness which Buddha has, and he's never able to concentrate in the meditation he does. It is believed that one day he was sitting under a banyan tree, and a woman called Sujata thought that Buddha was basically a tree god, and she will offer some kheer to Buddha to eat, and Buddha will eat that kheer. On seeing Buddha eat, the 5 monks argue that you are not serious, you're not a serious aspirant, you are not very simply concentrating on what you need to do, and the 5 monks will leave Buddha. However, it is believed that once Sujata's kheer is eaten by Buddha, he will concentrate and meditate. A woman called Mara will try to distract him, but he will not get distracted. And once he ate that kheer and basically meditated, he got the what we call as 4 noble truths and the way to very simply get salvation. This moment is etched in Buddhist history as what is called as the moment of the Dharma Chakra Parivartana. The word Dhamma is basically a Prakrit word. Prakrit is a language for the Sanskrit word Dharma. So the moment Buddha gets enlightenment, or Siddharth becomes Buddha by getting the enlightenment, the Atriya Sachais, the 4 noble truths, and the way to get out of the birth and rebirth issue, which is the Ashtanga Marg, the Eightfold Path, that is etched in history as Dharma Chakra Parivartana or Dhamma Chakra Parivartana, the turning of the wheel of Dharma. And that is why the wheel is considered very, very important in Buddhist history and is also a very important symbolism which we've taken in our emblem and even in our flag. The fact of the matter is the emblem of India, the government emblem, the Ashoka Chakra, which you see very simply, is the one which represents the Dharma Chakra Parivartana. And ironically, once Buddha will get enlightenment, the same 5 ascetics which had actually abandoned Buddha will come back to Buddha, and Buddha will give them the first sermon and argue that this is the path, and thereafter they will become his most important disciples, the 5 first disciples of Buddha. Buddha throughout his life thereafter will move around in the Mahajanpada period, in the different Mahajanpadas, in the core area of the alluvial plain itself. He will create bigger and bigger following, and the followers of Buddha will then start to come together. And when at the age of 80, Buddha will die out of natural death or natural causes, he will be succeeded by a body of monks who together came to be called as the Sangha. Sangha is the monastic establishment which brought everyone together and brought Buddha's teaching together, which we'll discuss after lunch. But very simply, Buddha's story is a story of transformation, is a story of realization, is a story of how philosophically we can change. For a UPSC aspirant, the story is extremely relevant, and I try to make it relevant for you because sometimes people will abandon you. Sometimes certain people will say that your method is not going to work. Sometimes people argue that you have to become a full renunciant, give up everything to clear UPSC. Sometimes you have your own understanding. Don't listen to others, because the same 5 people which left Buddha came back to learn from him. So concentrate on what you want to do. Concentrate on your meditation, your aradhana, which is this preparation. But don't let anybody else tell you how to do it, other than us who are trying to guide you, but not change you. Never change for others. That is a very important point. And very simply, this story has been translated in different languages, and Buddha as a figure became a revered personality who was very, very, very powerful and influential at this point of time. When I will discuss Ashtanga Marg with you, then I will tell you how very simply he undercut the Vedic Brahmanistic understanding of salvation by arguing for something very simple. So let's try to do this story again, but now through the PPT. See, Buddha was born in Lumbini, which is in Nepal today. Siddharth was the son of Sudodana and Maya of the Shakya clan Kshatriya community. He was then later married to Yashodhara and also had a son called Rahul. At the age of 29, Siddharth saw 4 things: an old man, a sick man, a corpse, and a renunciant. Siddharth left his home riding the horse Kanthanka and wandered around for 6 years seeking for the truth. Under the people tree where he ate Sujata's kheer, he will basically concentrate and get enlightenment. He will give his first sermon at Sarnath. Basically, it is believed that the first sermon was given under Bodhi tree at Benares, and then he moved to Sarnath, where he actually started his following. But the first sermon was actually given at Benares, and then thereafter he moved to Sarnath. This event is etched in what we call as Buddhist history as the moment of what is called the Dharma Chakra Parivartan, the turning of the wheel of Dhamma or Dharma, and he will later die at the age of 80 at Kushinagar. Now, the words which are used here, for example, Sarnath, Benares, the concept of Kshatriya, name, and these things, UPSC mostly does not ask. But for any other examination, basic life history of Buddha is generally asked. What is the name of the son, the wife, or the father or the mother? Where did he die? Where did he was born? Basic points are given to you here. Now, Buddha got to know about what is called the Atriya Sachais, or the 4 noble truths. Now, when we talk about the 4 noble truths, very simply, the first thing which he got to know through his enlightenment is that there is sorrow, there is dukh. Then is Sarman the disciple? No, Sarman means what I am giving you right now, a teaching, not the name of the disciple. Sarman is teaching. There is suffering. We all know that dukh hai. There's a cause for that dukh, samudaya. Dukh can be removed, sure. How do we remove that dukh? is called the Ashtang Marg, eightfold. According to him, if we follow these 8 things, dukh hat jayega. The sorrow will go away. In Buddhist philosophy, there's also one more term which is used, which is called Triratnas. Triratnas are basically 3 jewels of Buddhism. Obviously, first Buddha himself was the first pillar. Basically, think of them as pillars. Second was his teachings, which is nothing but Dhamma. And third is the establishment after him, which is the Sangha. Now, what do you do with this information? You have to learn this. They can ask you these questions. What are the 3 jewels of Buddhism? They can ask you what is the Arya Sachai, Atriya Sachai, what is the concept of the 4 noble truths. This is a standard thing which they can ask because Buddhist philosophy sometimes asks. Now, would you like to know what are the 8 things which can basically take away all the dukh which you have in life? This is the last thing we do before we take a break. Would you like to know the dukh removing 8-fold path? Sab dukh mil jayenge. Yes, very good. Okay. Yes, sir. Ready? Okay. So, this is the path which Buddha chose and argued for. The Ashtanga Marg, the 8-fold path. The first thing which Buddha said, in order to remove all sorrows and dukh from your life, is to have the right view. View means that you look at your targets, you look at everyone else, you look at your life with the right view. Right would mean good. Good. We know good and bad, right, good view. Then he argued that we should have with this view right intention also. For example, a lot of people would argue that they are your friends, but they don't have the right intention. So they argue to be friends, but they're not your friends because the intention is wrong. So you should have right intention along with you. Then you should also have right speech, which is that some people want to do good for you, but in front of you they will only lie. So what you think, what you view, you should also speak. And the culmination of the first set, which is that with the right view, with the right intention and right speech, we should also act in the right way. Visa. Which is that you act in the right way. Your actions should not be contradictory to what you want to do. Again, you have seen people who say that I want to help you, I'm there for you, but then they will act in the opposite way itself. So their view, intention, speech, and action are not together. This is the first thing, which is very simply act, say, view, and have the right intention to do good for people. If you will always think of this, you will never actually get dukh because you're acting in the right way, so right things will happen to you. Now comes right livelihood. Now you are best person in the world, but you are a thief. You're the best, you have right action, you have right speech, you have right intention, you have right view. But then your hobby is basically to murder people. Then your livelihood is problematic. What you do for a living should also be a reflection of what you think. And one of the best, guess, one of the best livelihoods prescribed by Buddha himself was, guess it, and you know the answer to it already. Come on, tell me. What is the best livelihood which Buddha argued for? Not monks. Think of the audience and then tell me. Not teacher, not giver, not serve people, not Kshatriya. Yes, Varsha, very good. Trading, merchant. Very simply, if you are doing exchange, you are having right action, right speech, right intention, right view. Vaishya community he needed to bring into the fold. So the best livelihood prescribed by the Sangha was mercantile activity, trading. So for them, that was the best, wherein you're not killing anybody, you're not doing anything, you're just interacting with people. So view, intention, speech, action, livelihood. Then comes right effort. Effort means that you can have everything right, but you could be acting in the wrong direction, which is that efforts have to be in the right direction. So you want to be a UPSC, your right action also, your right speech also, right intention also, right view also, right livelihood also, but your effort is in the wrong direction. Makes no sense. Then comes right mindfulness. This is basically thinking. So the difference between intention and thinking is that you could be thinking in a different way, but your intention could be different. So think, live, act, speech or speak, intend and view your life in the right way. If you will look at this in this way, then you will never have dukh. And how can you actually inculcate these things? And the answer is right samadhi, or what we call as meditative position. Meditative position. Samadhi means meditative position. So by meditation, you can get right view, you can get right intention, you can get right speech, you can get right action, you can get right livelihood, effort, and thinking. So very simply, according to Buddha, this 8-fold path is followed by monks, a little bit more stricter rules, but by people can lead them to the path of salvation. Now tell me one thing, vis-a-vis Vedic Brahmanism, can standard people, lay people who do not have money, follow the Ashtanga Marg? Yes. This is where no. This is where Ashtanga Marg undercuts Vedic Brahmanism. I am a person who wants moksha. Vedic Brahmanism, I will go to a Brahmin, he will say, give me dan, dakshina, I will do ritual. You go to Buddha, he will say, meditate. Whatever you're doing, you do. It should not be about killing others or looting somebody. You have the right intention, right speech, right action, right thinking, right. Is there any resource which is needed for this? Is he going to say, even if I'm doing samadhi, if I'm taking meditation, do I need money for that? No. This is where Buddhism is a much simpler religion than what we call as Vedic Brahmanism or early Hinduism. Early Hinduism is ritual-based, complex, based on text, has Brahmin who mediate everything. Here you don't need mediation only. You just need the right way of learning to meditate and you will get salvation. So before we take a break, what have we done till this point? Is this making sense? Ashtanga Marg. The answer to this question, does it work? The answer to this question is what? Does the Ashtanga Marg work? What is the answer to that? Mindfulness means thinking. Does the Ashtanga Marg work? The answer to that question I already gave you in the beginning. Yes, Saurabh, he remembers the answer. I don't care. I really don't care if this works or not. I have to tell you the path. That is it. Does it work? Should we follow it? Should we not follow it? The answer is we don't care because it's a part of our syllabus. That is why doing it. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, What have we done till this point? We started our discussion with Mahajanpadas. We discussed Magad. Thereafter, we discussed the concept of Magad's dominance, then the three dynasties, the important rulers. Then we moved on to the Uttar Pad, Dakshin Pad, punch-marked coins. Then we discussed the need for new religions, Vedic Brahmanistic moksha concept, and how we have gone beyond it, or there was a need for new religion itself. Further, we discussed Ajivikism, which undercuts to Niyati, and we now discuss the core philosophy of Buddhism. Atriya Sacha is the four noble truths, the concept of Ashtanga Marg, and the three Ratnas. Anybody has any issue till this point? If no, then we break for lunch and we come back at 3:40. Nobody has no issues. You can just learn Visa LEMS, which is vision, view, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and samadhi. What if UPSC asks in interview, what is Ashtanga Marg work? Chanda, if you are in an interview and somehow you've steered your interview to the question that does the Ashtanga Marg work or not, you are already in a very, very difficult position. But if to the question, yes, it works. We should follow this in everyday livelihood, this and that. There your answer is going to be yes. But for God, or for the love of God, never take these type of topics or never steer them, because you steer your interview. Somehow you've gone into Buddhism and talking about Ashtanga Marg is already a problematic aspect of your interview, and you've already gone the wrong direction. But if the question comes, does it work? Everything, yes. If the board says that the sun comes out from the south, the answer to that question is going to be what? If the UPSC board tells you that the sun comes from the southern direction, the answer to that question is what? Yes. Everything what the board says is yes. Never contradict them on something which they believe very powerful in, or in a way very, very, very faithfully. Whatever they say is yes. So if you see read the room. If everybody is saying that Buddhist thing is good, sure, why not? Yes. Can we take a break now? Yes, great. So I will see you at now 3:40. This link is going to close, and have a good lunch. When we come back, Buddhist, the most important discussion: councils, terms, Mahayanic, Hinayanic, Vajrayanic, Jainism, and we will close this module. And by the evening, we will start Mauryas. So I will see you at 3:40 with part B. See you. Take care. Bye. The time is going to remain 3:40. I can't change it. It is the way it is. So 4 p.m., 5 p.m. You join at 4 p.m. No issue.